Hello and welcome to Channel 51 News, Thursday, December the 18th in Australia, December the 17th in the US, and we're moments before Donald Trump gives his address to the nation. And what exactly will he be talking about tonight? Well, maybe we're going to jump the gun on that one, no pun intended, but we are talking about a lot of violence, a lot of hatred, a lot of sadness this week as we lead into Christmas and out of Hanukkah. In the middle of the 8 days of the Festival of Lights, for those that understand the story of the Maccabees and the miracle of the lights, and who would have thought that this would come with such darkness. And a big welcome back to Josh Bernstein. Good to see you, Josh.
Good to see you. Great to be back on the program with you.
Josh, a lot of speculation all the time across social media, and I'm wondering now if we've got to a point of mass hysteria in trutherism, and I don't mean to disrespect those, but there are people that have followed me and been supporters of me that immediately attacked me for being a shill for coming out on Sunday night and saying that it wasn't a false flag attack at Bondi Beach. And find it very, very disturbing when you can have evidence as obvious as these two shooters who were there on the day, a father and son, father born in India, seemingly having a Pakistani name, Akram. Sajid Akram sounds very Pakistani. And Naveed Akram, this 24-year-old murderer, call him that. We don't have to say alleged murder. We saw it happen there in our eyes, but of course the law says alleged killer. But at the same time, Four Corners, the ABC came out with a story and showed video of this Naveed Akram, radicalised back then, working with a particular Muslim cleric from Bankstown in southwestern Sydney, and was out there talking about religious dogma, etc., trying to recruit. At the same time, we have a Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, saying that there was no evidence of radicalisation. It seems that they went straight to violent extremism, if that's the case, Albanese. And and then, of course, there is other speculation, if you will, or this idea that it was an Israeli false flag. There was that Arsen Atrovsky, the fellow with the blood on his face that looked fake, which doesn't add to, it adds to that theory there. And this is a person who was meant to have been at October 7, who fights the UN against what he calls the tyrants of the UN, advocating for education on anti-Semitism. But the last thing you need to do in these situations is inflame them or add to it. Like Benjamin Netanyahu, for example, shouldn't say anything at this point. It's obvious that the world is absolutely disgusted by what's gone on, and he doesn't need to then come in and then push his weight around, which only adds to the theories. But I've seen theories of people talking about that this Naveed Akram is secretly Jewish and that he wants to go and kill his own, and that therefore it's a false flag. I mean, this is this madness, insanity, and you almost can't give any sort of credence to such arguments. They're just stupid beyond the pale. But also this idea, and one of the saddest things I'm finding at the moment is that the Q line, saving Israel for last for a very specific reason not mentioned here once, has been one of the biggest fuelers of anti-Semitism in the Trump supporting movement, and it's been a real letdown for many people who just need to just let things go. So we're at a stage now that if you then look at this little bit of disappointment as people get to the end of 2025 in terms of the Trump performance, not seeing any justice as people would have expected in 2025, and it seems to be the one thing that is taking away the momentum or the power or the support for Trump. If there is any falling away here, at least we're seeing it within the ranks. And of course now you've got Dan Bongino announcing that he'll be stepping down from his role in the FBI. Some saying it was only ever meant to be for a year, others saying that there's just incompetent, not up for it, disappointed by what happened with Epstein, etc. So there's a lot of murkiness around the edges there. But the one thing that the Trump supporters have been able to do, at least since 2017, is to be able to get behind the president and give him as much rope or as much slack in the rope as they've needed to, trusting his agenda. But now that there seems to be this battle fatigue that's worn in and going around in circles and the endless attacks, etc., it's just non-stop. Oh, and by the way, for those that are watching, there is also another story that's broken, is that the former Victorian Premier, Daniel Andrews, has been laid up in hospital for a few days. Nobody liking Daniel Andrews who watches this show, and it's speculated speculated that he may have suffered a stroke. He's also known to be a heavy smoker. So there's all of that. So Josh, putting all those crazy things out there at the moment, coming back to Bondi on Sunday, the fact was that 15 people, I think it's now 16 innocent people, have lost their lives at the hands of vicious, violent, extremist murderers who think that it's okay in Australia to go to a Jewish Hanukkah event on the night of the lighting of the first candle and to just indiscriminately murder people is unacceptable on every level. Anyone who is trying to justify it, including the Prime Minister, to try and play down Islamic extremism, is really on the wrong side of history at this point. And it only just goes to show that there is just this level of hatred towards people in a world that you're meant to not hate anyone, but it just seems to seep out. And I find it most disappointing when it comes from within the so-called freedom movement, who seems to always want to put the blame on something for their idealist approaches. And for that, I find that there is a separation. It's part of the reason why I sometimes want to put my hands up and say, guys, you're crazy. You've jumped the shark. It's beyond the pale at that point. I find that horrific.
Wow, what a setup that was. A lot to unpack there. First and foremost, I will say this. Diversity is not our strength. Let me repeat that. Diversity is not our strength, especially diversity that refuses to assimilate. So when countries like Australia and New Zealand and the UK and even America and Canada and all around the world bring in these people that refuse to assimilate into the new culture of their new country, you're bound to have these types of things happen. So that would be number one. Number two, I think this is a very sad and horrific thing that happened. My thoughts and prayers, of course, go out to all the victims. But now the focus is somewhere where it should not be. And this is what I was afraid of was going to happen. I actually already predicted that this was going to happen. We saw what happened in Tasmania in 1996. That basically ended any type of Second Amendment in the country of Australia, because of what happened then. Now, the Albanese government is going to use this to go after guns even more. Now, meanwhile, Australia is one of the most prohibited countries in the entire world for having and owning firearms. So what else could possibly be done? And they're going after the guns instead of the real problem, which is the jihadists that you let infiltrate your countries, okay? You're going to hear the straight talk from Bernstein. As far as the anti-Semitism, it's disgusting. We see it on Brown University. Ella Cook, she was targeted because she was Jewish. She was the vice president of the Republicans Club on Brown University. We see the Hanukkah celebration being targeted. We've seen so many other examples of this. It's really just disgusting. And as someone who is Jewish and is very pro-Christian, we have to understand that Christians and Jews need to be united in a front against Islam. Because if they come after the Jews, who do you think they're going to come after next? They're going to come after the Christians. And I don't care who hears this in Australia or around the world. I'm not afraid of anyone. The bottom line is that Islam is a cancer. It is a cancer on the world. And that cancer has metastasized into many of these Western countries. And it's about damn time our governments stop apologizing for it and use force to get rid of it.
When you have a scenario that one group of people is attacked by another group of people here in Australia consistently, when you consider that every Jewish event has private security, every Jewish synagogue has had security at every service for decades now, when you have Jewish sporting events that have to have extra security no matter where you go, and this security, by the way, is voluntary. Jewish organisations here in Australia provide it for free for these organisations. So that's the level that the community is at. So there's no profiteering or anything like that. And at the same time, it doesn't go the other way. You don't see Jewish people walking into mosques and firing guns. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world. And so you have to say that at some point that there is a genuine cancer. Now, at the same time, the apologists come out in real time, and they will say things like, well, the person the hero that tackled the Sajid Ahmed there on the day, was a man who spoke Arabic, that may be Muslim, maybe Christian Maronite, that hasn't yet been determined, and therefore that Islam is a religion of peace. It's a pretty big, long stretch to say that if you have religious fundamentalism. So what do we know about these killers? Well, they recently attended the Philippines to a known ISIS training area on the map where training camps are at. The father was born in India, as we've since found out. Indians very quickly to dismiss and say they've had nothing to do with him. There was also the connections to this Bankstown Muslim cleric. When it was brought up by Peter Stefanovic at Sky News to Tony Burke, whether or not they should do something, or Richard Marles, I think it was actually the Deputy Prime Minister, they should do something about radicalised Muslim clerics, he kind of walked away from it, and they try and do this general thing. But the difference is now that in Australia there is the alternative. In the One Nation Party, Pauline Hanson seems to be getting a rise and a rise and a rise. But it only makes sense that this would happen, that there's already been a reaction to mass immigration in this country. Of course, since Albanese got into power, he trebled the rates of immigration from some 250,000 a year to 750,000 a year. He does not want to take his foot off the brake. And of course, it suits him economically because it disguises his economic failures in what I call a GDP Ponzi scheme. If you keep bringing in more and more people, obviously the economy will grow, even if there is a per capita recession that former Liberal member Craig Kelly has talked about many times. So there's that scenario as well. So there are only interests for the Labor government to do this. But there's some other interesting anomalies that have popped up. There's another one. The ASIO leader Mike Burgess, who himself has a case to answer, the fact that this fellow was attending ISIS-type meetings and his father is granted a licence, even though they share the same address. But Mike Burgess was excluded from National Security Cabinet meetings, along with the director of ASIS, which is another interesting one that's been pointed out to me today. So why is this the case, and why would the Albanese government be looking to remove people who would be known to at least know what is going on here? Now, of course, the other big thing is that the Jewish community has warned for some time the Albanese government that such an attack would take place. Now, that people will say, oh, that proves that it's a false flag. No, it doesn't. It proves that people know how to predict trends. And the trends is that when you have gas the Jews being yelled out at the Sydney Opera House and nothing going on, when you have Palestinian protests with politicians like Bob Carr walking over the Harbour Bridge protesting Palestine, nothing that's got to do with anything to do with Australia here, you get into this scenario. But here's the problems that I see. You have the civilian population, where you have jihad being declared against literally anyone who's not Muslim, if you really want to get down to it, but particularly targeting Jewish people and therefore by extension Israel, or is it by targeting Israel and therefore by extension Jewish people? Now, you can have Jewish people who are Zionists, which effectively means they're supporting the state of Israel, and you have Jewish people that are just Jewish people that have lived without a state in their recent modern history, and go down that pathway as well. But we're not here to argue the history, because the Bible pretty much tells you that the Promised Land belongs to the Jewish people, and you can argue that to the end of time. And there are others that are saying, well, that's not real, and therefore we're only going to look at modern times, and that Palestinians were there. Well, that's not true either. And so it's a people. And there's the other part, and so you look at all of that and you realise, and I said this some time ago, when that bridge crossing went, I said you are now going to be forced to take a side. Now in Australia, a bit like Switzerland, we've always wanted to be neutral. Well, now you've been forced to take a side. And what's happening, of course, is that there has been a huge groundswell of support, as there should be, for anyone who is murdered as part of belonging to a certain group. Now, heaven forbid it would be a group of Christians or a group of Muslims or a group of Hindus or anything like that. You would be the same thing. Any Australian would rally behind another group to support them, as you would expect, because no one in this country wants our way of life stolen by people. Now, this Naveed Akram was born in Australia. The father wasn't, of course, but that doesn't mean you can't import it and you can't grow it here. And the fact that you would be born in Australia and think that it's okay to become a mass murderer and shoot targets means that this man was never qualified to be in Australia, and nor was his father either. These are bad people, horrific people, and of course the other thing is, how did they get radicalised? Did the father come here already radicalised, or did they join this particular mosque and become radicalized, or is it a meeting of the minds? But the fact that you would be trained, the fact that you would have so many guns, the fact that you would be going to the Philippines, etc., and the fact that these people knew how to fire the guns the way that they did means that this was something that's come a long way. Now, I don't know if people are born like this, that say when I grow up at 24 I'm going to become a mass murderer, or whether or not they're going to be radicalized to a point, because I don't think people actually grow up and go, I know what I'm going to do, and get to a point where I'm going to become a martyr doing this work of Allah or whatever they want to say. It doesn't make any sense. So I wonder how it is that these organisations recruit, because this particular cleric, there are other people connected that have gone away for a long time for planning such a thing and have been locked up in jails. So is this an engine room? Is this a feeding point? Is this where this hatred comes from? Is it programmed, or is it just built up and built up and built up, and there's always going to be another one? Because the point there is that you have to stop it at the cause and not at the other end. It's not the gun that caused the problem here. It was the trigger of the finger that did it, that came from this radicalisation process that thinks that it's okay to murder people in our country and steal our way of life. And it is the stealing of our way of life here in Australia that we don't have a need to shoot guns at people for any purposes, including if you've been broken into and you've had a home invasion. We still don't even have that protection. So then people are arguing, therefore, this whole gun thing. But our guns are virtually minimal to the point that they virtually don't exist. We have. Today there was a survey, there was thousands of people in the suburb of Camden that actually own guns, but this is sort of a rural, semi-rural area, and they own thousands of guns there, but we haven't seen these guns being used. And there's no crime. So there's the other side of it.
I wonder why that is. Maybe because they're armed?
Well,
Look,
potentially.
Here's what I'll say. First and foremost, let's talk about the, quote, religion of peace, okay? In the Quran, it literally says that we will not recognize or obey any other religions or faiths. So how can someone sit there with a straight face and say that I belong to a religion of peace when one of its basic tenets is to deny the existence of other faiths? So the argument that it's a religion of peace goes directly down the toilet in 2 seconds with that one fact, okay? The next thing is we have imported the people that want us dead. So if you want to stop Islamic terrorism, because there's no such difference between Islamic terrorism and Islam, that's the same thing. Look at the Quran, they all believe in the same thing. I'm not telling you anything different. And if you want to stop it, you eradicate the problems from your countries. In other words, you do mass deportations and you get rid of these people from your countries. It really comes down to what I said the other week. Cost versus value. If the people coming into the country are costing you more, whether that be in life, treasure, rape, murder, financial benefits, welfare, whatever it might be, and their value is pretty much nothing because they don't do anything or add anything to better the overall lives of the people in the country that now they are living in, then why should they be there at all? Send them back to their 7th century savage lands and leave them alone to fend for themselves. Why would we import them anywhere around the world? We're dealing with that in America. We have the Somali sewer rats, that's what I like to call them, in the Minnesota area, okay? And we are sending in ICE, and we are sending in the military, and we're sending in the National Guard, and we are extracting these cancerous tumors out of our country. And I would suggest that the people in Australia figure out a way to not only get armed, but more importantly, start militias, start whatever you can to start extracting these people from your countries. Because if you don't, guess what? They're going to outbreed you in time, and you are all going to become their slaves. And if not their slaves, they're victims, because you won't be alive anymore.
The more, if you can call it, Australian approach here will be that there will be a massive shift in the honeymoon that Albanese has enjoyed. There already is those rumblings underneath. The fact that we saw Pauline Hanson get applauded at a memorial yesterday alongside Barnaby Joyce, the new One Nation recruit, indicates that there is like the original 1996 uprising of One Nation, where she got, certainly in the federal and then in the Queensland electorate, some over 22%, I think, of the vote. which is enormous, it's heading back in that direction. Now, at the same time, the Liberal Party has issued an anti-Semitic task force. The former Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, obviously Jewish, came out yesterday and gave an hour-long speech. Of course, the Labor cynics, who are in a tailspin because they might lose power, are bitching and moaning that Frydenberg made it a campaign speech. Well, the reality is it's fired him up. And the party needs renewal, and he will no doubt be back one way or another to be able to change things up within. So is it in tragedy that there will be the renaissance based on self-interest in these political parties? And it seems that way. So as somebody who's not in either of those parties, who's doing some work with People First, I'm certainly encouraging that party to look towards how we're going to merge as our number one thing. But of course, the party itself has to establish itself. So this is always a long process, but you can see where we're headed here, that there is a lot of support for these particular political parties. Now, Josh, we've got a lot to get through in the show today, so I'll probably pause there on Bondi, and people can certainly, we'll see what happens in the future in terms of what's going on, but we know, of course, that the killer, alleged killer, 59 charges, 15 murders, terrorism, etc., etc. So that person, Akram, is going away forever and will no doubt be locked up in Goulburn Supermax, and that will be that. It will certainly start an argument for capital punishment to be returned here in Australia. There's lots of subjects that people want to talk about in the lead up to the 2028 election. But just quickly, Daniel Andrews is in hospital with a mystery illness. I'm speculating that it might be a stroke. There'll be people cheering in the background, which is not the way that we need to react. But the point is that Daniel Andrews caused a lot of harm to a lot of people, and there will be a lot of people that don't think he needs to enjoy any well wishes from the people from whom he harmed. And it's horrible that we're in a situation like that. Meanwhile, I want to talk about quickly, Dan Bongino has announced his resignation as Deputy Director of the FBI. Here is his statement, Josh. Just putting up on screen there. I'll be leaving my position with the FBI in January. I want to thank President Trump, AG Bondi, and Director Patel for the opportunity to serve with purpose. Most importantly, I want to thank you, my fellow Americans, for the privilege to serve you. God bless America and all those who defend her. Josh.
Yeah, look, I guess my initial reactions is that I'm not shocked. We heard rumblings months ago that he took a week off because he was upset on the Epstein rollout, and for good reason. I understand that. Dan, when he did his show, was pretty blunt, pretty straightforward with the way that he would do things and say things and tell things. I said from day one he was in the wrong position. He should have been the director of the Secret Service in the United States, protecting President Trump. As a matter of fact, I'd like to see him do that rather than go back to Rumble, which of course he co-owns and has his show with. But I'm going to make a prediction. He will not be the same Dan Bongino. He will not talk about the same things. He will be more coy. He will be more cautious. He will leave certain things out. He will self-censor himself. He's going to be a completely different Dan Bongino. And the reason is very simple, because he was part of the government. And anyone that is part of the government that leaves the government and goes back to normal life or television or radio, they will never be the same, number one. And number two, they will never cover and talk about the things in the depth and details that they once did, because they already know what's happening. They've seen the sausage in the back room being made. They know everything. And because of that, they'll never be as effective as they once were, which is one reason why I never, ever want to be an elected official. I always want to have the ability to be able to speak my mind without any consequences, we hope, and just kind of tell it like it is and tell the truth. So that's my prediction on Dan Bongino.
No, I tend to agree that that's going to be the case, and it's always very hard to get back into it and get your numbers back to where you were. That's always a big, difficult one. And of course, there will be people that will tune in to the first few shows, and they'll want to hear what he actually knows and what he'll actually say. And of course, and if he won't say it, then that'll be the end of Dan Bongino at that perspective. And this is a big problem. Now, I want to talk to you also about Venezuela and the developments there. Trump has come out and said that they're talking about a blockade, as they were thinking or indicating that there was going to be war situation. What's your latest? What are you getting?
Well, I think that with the blockades of the oil tankers, clearly you can see that they are cutting him off at the knees. He's isolated. You now have Chile electing a right-wing government. You've got that. You've got Argentina with Milei. You've got Nayib Bukele in El Salvador. So you have all of these new leaders, Nicaragua. You have all these new leaders that are now right-leaning, number one, and less towards globalism, and certainly not towards drug trafficking and narco-terrorism and all that. So he has lost basically all of his relationships and people that would prop up his illegal and unconstitutional regime. He's basically a narco-terrorist running a country. And as I said, I didn't think he was going to last by Christmas. And who knows, I might actually be right. I think the speech tonight is going to be basically two things. I think, number one, he's going to tout all of his accomplishments, which, thank God, I'm glad he's going to do, because I think the American people need to be slapped in the face with a reality check that this has been the greatest president in 1 year in the history of the United States, and he needs to basically tell everybody all the incredible and amazing things that we've already accomplished. And I think part of that is also going to be getting rid of fentanyl, calling it a mass destruction weapon, and then also saying we are now going to take out these drug cartels to make America safer, to make the world safer, and we're going after these drug cartels. So I think it's going to be a plea to Congress to allow him to do it. Now, if they don't use an authorization for force, I believe he can still do it, but he has a limited amount of time that he can do it in. And quite frankly, I think the president is not only ready to do that, but they've been practicing and they've been organizing and strategizing for this moment for quite some time.
The arrival of the BBC, suing of the BBC for $10 billion in relation to the deceptively edited coverage of J6, at the same time that we hear of the Venezuelan connections to the voting machines, is also timely and interesting. And one wonders, therefore, if we're ever going to get to a case of justice. But it just seems that we just have to go around in a spiral, in an ever-increasing spiral, to gather up all this information that doesn't seem to get anywhere. And this at the same time that the Clintons have once again avoided having to go before the House Oversight Committee in relation to their Epstein connections. And now you've got James Comer coming out and saying if they don't front in January, they're going to issue arrest warrants for contempt warrants, which will be interesting what happens there. But it just seems that no matter...
the Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon treatment of 4 months at Danbury, hopefully.
Wouldn't that be interesting? And Clinton's saying that there's no need for a former president and a former Secretary of State to do that. Well, hang on a second. Aren't you the same people that went after Trump when he was president and said that no one's above the law? Like, the hypocrisy is just off the charts, and the fact that it's so selective. And I think this is the reason why we've all lost our minds, because there is no equal treatment under the law anymore. We know that that's finished. And I think that's the problem that we have. And it's almost like we're waiting to catch these people in a trap once and for all to say, well, look, you've been given 5,000 chances and finally you've been caught in something, whether it's election fraud or something like that. But of course, they know that they're protected and they know that they don't get caught. And all you've got to do is just say, well, I'm not turning up. It's like children playing in the backyard when someone gets out in cricket. I'm not getting out. I didn't hit the ball. I didn't get caught. And then you just sit there and you argue it out and you give up and you go on. That seems like where we are at the moment. It's just eternally frustrating. I would say that that's the reason that people have, if they are sort of feeling a little bit like hopeless, that would be the reason why. And of course, Dan Bongino leaving is going to add fuel to that fire. But at the same time, well, each to their own. We'll see what happens.
I talked about this on last night's show. This is a psyops by the left and the left-wing media. They are trying to divide the MAGA movement. They're saying that there's now cracks in the MAGA support and that MAGA isn't as strongly supportive of President Trump as they once were. And you're seeing these headlines. And of course, we see the Susie Wiles hit piece from Vanity Unfair, right? Well, looking at and I don't believe in polling, okay, not 100%, but the Reuters poll, which again is left-leaning, for 2026 general ballot, says Democrats 40, Republicans 36, not sure 16%. Okay, so first off, it's in the margin of error. Then it gets a little bit closer, and it says, what are the top things? Healthcare, 44%, food, 21%, housing, 20%. Which party has a better policy? So the only thing that Democrats lead on, the only thing, is D plus 12 for healthcare. Cost of living, even. Economy, Republicans plus 7. Immigration, Republicans plus 11. Crime, Republicans plus 12. And the generic is Democrats 40, Republicans 39, not sure 12%. So you know what I say to that? I say that anything that you hear in the media saying that the Republicans are down just because we lost a couple of special elections and Democrats are going to smoke us in the midterms, first off, it's way too early. Okay, we have 11 and a half months left. A lot can change in that time. And you know what's going to be the key? It's not going to be Epstein. It's not going to be whether these people are in jail. It's going to be the economy. It is always the economy. And once the economy comes back, these numbers are going to be a joke. Okay? Republicans are going to do much better. And now President Trump is pushing for no income tax for all 50 states, or if you're Barack Obama, 57 states. But I digress. And so if you pass something like that, good luck running against that. Who's going to say, we want everyone to be taxed for their income? Even dumb AOC, Dumbelina as I like to call her, put out a statement saying that it's unfair for people that are not working. This is who their leadership is. These stupid people with not one brain cell in their head. I mean, there's amoebas that are smarter than her and many of these other Democrats. So when you put all that together and the fact of how crazy left they're going, you got heels up headboard Harris now trying to get the nomination again. Please, by all means, go ahead and do it. So I'm not worried at this point. The economy has to come back. If the economy comes back, it's going to be a whole different talking point, a whole different ball game, and I think Republicans will be fine. But the economy has to come back. And this slow drip, 25 basis point thing is not going to work very well. So I'm hoping that there's other things that they're doing. Of course, $18 trillion coming into the economy. I'm not as worried as these people are talking about. And even my own supporters, I get emails all the time. Josh, I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. And I'm like, what are you worried about? We got 11 and a half months. Talk to me in June or in July. And believe me, you won't have to. Because if things aren't working in the right direction, I'll be the loudest voice out there, sounding the alarm bells. But right now, I'm not sounding them yet because I think there's just way too much time and too many things can happen.
I love the fact that AOC has come out and said that she doesn't support the removal of income tax because it would be unfair on those that don't work.
Yeah,
I think that's the quote of this entry. Yeah, it's unbelievable. So hang on a second. What are you saying? So that those that don't work need to get two welfares? Oh, they already do in some circumstances.
3 or 4, right? SNAP benefits for all.
Unbelievable. Well, there you go. It's extraordinary. Let's talk now about Rob Reiner and his wife's murder at the hands, allegedly, of their son. What do you know?
Well, what I do know is that when they went to the Conan O'Brien Christmas party, this was like a black tie affair. This was a nice affair with, lots of wealthy people. Everyone's dressed in a suit and tie. Women are dressed in beautiful gowns and dresses, right? He shows up in a hoodie, whacked out on crystal meth. He's walking around and he's asking people if they're famous. And he ends up talking to, I think his name is it Dan Heater or something Heater? I can't remember the first name. He's a SNL comedian.
Yes.
Hater, whatever his name is. And he's having a conversation with a couple of people. And apparently Nick goes in and interrupts him, asks him a question, whatever it was. And so Hader, the comedian from SNL, says, sorry, but this is a private conversation. This doesn't include you or something. And he said that Nick stared at him and then ran off and left the party. But before all that happened, when he showed up dressed in a hoodie, his father immediately confronted him, according to sources that I've talked to. And his father said, what the hell are you doing? Why are you dressed like a bum? And his son didn't like that. And they started yelling and screaming. And then his father said, I'm going to throw you out of your guest house if you don't go to rehab. And at that point, it got really loud, it got really obnoxious, and they all left. And at that point, the son, Nick, ended up going to a hotel, probably on his father's dime because he's a Nepo baby, but he ends up getting a hotel and he gets a room, and he checks in around 4:30 in the morning. Then, of course, we find out that the massage therapist that was supposed to go into the house and for their massage therapy appointment the next day couldn't get into the house, so called Romy, the daughter. The daughter comes in and sees them, deceased, obviously, and their throats slit. So what ended up happening is, at some point, he went and more than likely killed them in their sleep, because he checked into the hotel at 4:30 a.m., and then he left the hotel around 5:36. He then went to the house. And remember, they found them dead at 3:30 when nobody would answer the door and everything else. So my guess, and again, it's just a guess, is that they were both sleeping in their beds, and he attacked them in the middle of the night and slit their throats. Then he went back to his hotel, and there was blood all over inside the room. There was, he washed up everything. The sheets were bloody. It was a mess. And so they have found that. The police have found that. That's something that probably hasn't been released to the public yet, but I know that they have that type of evidence, which is why the next day they charged 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances using a deadly weapon, in this case a knife, and now looking at possibly the death penalty. Now, granted, in 2019, Gavin Newsom did a moratorium and stopped death penalties altogether. But hopefully, if Steve Hilton wins the governorship, he has vowed to actually remove that and seek the death penalty and allow these people, I think there's like 530 people on death row in California, to finally be put to death. But that's a whole long story, and we don't know where that's at as of yet. The prosecutors have already said that they're going to consult with the family members, so the chances of him getting the death penalty, I think, here is probably slim to none. I'd like to see it happen. I don't think it's going to happen, because I think the stature of who this person was, Rob Reiner, and being a director and famous person in Hollywood, I think that the prosecutors that are going to prosecute this case are going to adhere to the wishes, shall we say, of the family members, and I would assume that those family members are not going to seek the death penalty, but it should be a life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Well, I don't think you get out, do you, when you're 32 or whatever he is?
He was a Nepo baby, okay?
Yeah.
He was a spoiled, rotten brat, high on drugs his entire life, and quite frankly, Rob Reiner would be alive if he had different parenting skills, okay? Instead of coddling this kid and not using tough love, you can clearly see in the interview where in 2016 for the movie Charlie or whatever it was, there's an interview out there. It's like 12 minutes long. I watched it. You can see from the body language that there's a power struggle within that relationship. And any power struggle in any relationship, whether it be father-son, mother-daughter, or husband-wife, if one person loves the other one more, then that situation is going to end in travesty. Because when there's a power struggle, one person is giving more than the other person is getting, and therefore you can see it clearly that Rob Reiner loved his son way more and respected his son and cared for his son way more than his son loved his father. There's reports that he was losing his hair and he was mad at his father and grandfather because genetics, and he was upset that he was going to be bald too. I mean, this was a kid that lived in the guest house, would destroy property all the time, was high on meth, cocaine, heroin, 18 stints in rehab. And then Rob Reiner in the interview says, well, I don't think a punitive look at disciplinary purposes is the right way to go. And I know my kid better than these experts out there and these drug counselors out there. So in other words, his arrogant elitist attitude towards basically parenting his kid, I think in some ways ended up with his demise.
Well, Rob's other son, I can't remember his name, but he's a much better looking man than Nick is. And you can tell that there must be a green-eyed monster in there as well that may have led to all of this. And of course, there was another weird thing, an occurrence that happened just recently on Channel 9 here in Australia. Will Wheaton, who was one of the stars of Stand By Me, was in an extended interview, and he talked about coming from an abused family and how much he was loved by the crew of Stand By Me, including Rob Reiner, which set off my alarm bells on that whole weird thing that goes on in Hollywood. And then Will went on at the end of the interview to talk about how he was living in a post-capitalist world, so he was off with the fairies as well. But that was interesting. But he also mentioned that the last time he watched Stand By Me was making a commentary track with Rob Reiner and another cast member. Anyway, the points I just want to make
Bill
there is
Hader,
that...
by the way, is the guy's name.
Bill Hay, that's right. I just want to make the point that myself personally, I would argue with Rob Reiner on X. He really did become a meathead with his anti-Trump derangement syndrome. And of course, Trump made those comments that most people are disappointed with.
Yeah, and I am one of those people. I don't think it was appropriate. He could have just said, my thoughts and prayers go out to the families and the victims. May they rest in peace, and just left it alone. He didn't have to go into the whole Trump derangement thing, because what's going to happen is it's going to alienate some people, number one. And number two, you might see attack ads in the midterms of this is who you support, someone that would say this when this person was dying, you know. And so, I don't know. I just think it was an unforced error.
Yeah, exactly. I would have said something along the lines of, despite the fact that we had our differences, this tragic demise of one of Hollywood's most respected superstars is tremendously sad for the entire family. I wish it never would have happened, and left it at that. I just want to say something similar, is that for me, Rob Reiner, as much as I hated his politics, he was one of the great Hollywood directors. He was incredibly well loved. When Harry Met Sally remains one of my all-time favourite films. It introduced me to, I'd already known who Billy Crystal was, but I think that was the masterpiece that made Billy Crystal my all-time favourite comedian.
Hold that thought. I don't want to talk too much, because on tomorrow's Full Throttle Thursday, the people that are going to watch this and that are going to be joining me, the question is going to be, and I'm going to give you 5 choices, what was one of your favorite movies? So please don't answer. We'll find out tomorrow on that one.
Well, fabulous. But that's my point there. But Rob Reiner, of course, was the son of Carl Reiner, another great comedian. And Carl Reiner, along with Mel Brooks, made one of the funniest comedy skits ever, The 2,000-Year-Old Man, which I encourage everyone to check out. So there you have Carl Reiner playing the straight man, interviewing Mel Brooks, the 2,000-year-old man. What was the greatest invention of all time? You've been around for 2,000 years. And he says, Saran wrap. it's just
Mel Brooks is one of my favorites too. I mean, he's 99 or 100. I think he's 99 right now. And Young Frankenstein. I mean, my father, when he was alive, and my brother, we would watch Young Frankenstein and recite all the lines. You know, put the candle back, you know, and Feldbrucher, you know. I mean, we just loved it. I mean, silent movie was another good one, of course. You know, History of the World. I mean, how could you forget that one, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
So they were great movies.
And let me just mention that you could never make Blazing Saddles today.
No, or the Frisco Kid, for that matter.
Yeah, which was a terrific film. Unbelievable. Now, we're down to our last 3 minutes, Josh, and I just want to quickly mention something that's not in your realm of expertise, but it explains the background that I've been using for some time. Tomorrow, December 19, 3I Atlas, the object, the interstellar object, some calling a comet that may be something else, will be appearing from behind the sun. But there is so many anomalies with this object that just blow my mind. For example, when it was discovered in July of this year, they found some form of pulse, some sort of, I can't remember the exact term for it, in the direction of the wow signal that the telescopes have been trained at in the entire sky. So if you look around you and can see the sky 360 degrees all around you if you're inside a ball, they're aiming at a very specific point out there in the sky, and they find a pulse. Now, what was incredible, that at the exact same time that they identified that this object or comet existed, behind that, they found 3 more pulses directly behind it that were the biggest ones ever discovered. Now, when they trained their telescopes behind the comet to look down into where it came from, they went extending. You're not going to believe this. 5 billion light years is where it came from. A galaxy, they tracked it to a galaxy 5 billion light years away from us. Now, if the universe is only meant to be 10 or 14 billion light years, they've found something a third of the way down to the entire known position where we are. Now, 5 billion light years means that this pulse travels at the speed of light. It means it was set off 5 billion years ago, Josh. It was set off before Earth was even created. and it was sent directly in the direction of this Object 3i Atlas that is extending directly, coming on a pathway into our solar system. It's gone past Venus, Mars, the Sun, Earth, and it's going to, you ready for this? It is going on a trajectory that is going to take it into the zone between where Jupiter and the Sun's gravity interchanges. In other words, where Jupiter's moons get brought in by its gravity, and where the Sun has the power to create planets, it's going to get caught right in that, almost in the current between the two of them. And the speculation is that this 3i Atlas could end up be caught in the Jupiter's gravity and become a moon of Jupiter, or park itself there. It is the most incredible thing that we've ever seen scientifically, astronomically, in our lifetimes and forever. But these anomalies are just mind-blowing, and all of that is fact. And so I'm excited because of what might come of it. But if this thing was to come in from outside our solar system and park itself as a moon of Jupiter, that's just mind-blowing.
Now, this thing's not going to hit Earth or anything
No,
like that,
no,
right?
it's more than one astronomical unit.
I heard that they did I think NASA or something, I heard something briefly that it was the largest preparation for an asteroid in world history that just happened or something, because I guess there's some kind of comet that's coming towards Earth. I don't know. I don't honestly. I don't follow. There's enough things to follow on planet Earth and out in the sky. So
this is it. Well, it's not interested in Earth, but it is interested in this gravitational field around Jupiter, and where it's almost been steering, not steering like whatever, but its trajectory has changed. Like it's so many anomalies. And of course, the other thing is that the solar system is on a plane. So you have the sun and you have them all on a plane. This thing's coming in at the softest angle on this plane that we've ever seen, which is so many anomalies, etc. So it remains to be seen. It could just fly in and fly out, we never see it again. But there is more than something going on here. Very, very exciting, and it's all going to start happening from the 19th of December, and we'll watch this over the next 6 months or so as it heads out towards Jupiter, but just incredible.
19th of December, that's in a few days. I'll be at Turning Point. I got media passes, and I'll be at the event post-Charlie. It's going to be very interesting.
Yes.
But, yeah, I'm looking forward to the event, but obviously not on the best of terms, sadly.
No, exactly right. Well, I'll just encourage people to check out jbushow.substack.com. And one thing is, if you choose to subscribe to Josh, I think it works out in Australian dollars roughly what my subscription is, probably around 70 or 75 Australian dollars to join it, but it's about 48 US dollars, I think, Josh, and you get a copy of your book thrown in as well, just if you want to check out and be involved if you'd like to.
And the thing is I offer for free subscribers, you get basically 2 to 3 shows a week that are free, and that's it. Otherwise, if you become a paid subscriber, you get a minimum of 7, sometimes as many as 10, 11, even 12 shows a week. So it's a big difference, not to mention the $14 value of the free book. And then you can also join the Thursday show, and there's a lot more perks that are involved with that. And quite frankly, the cost is so low. It's probably one of the lowest, if not the lowest, on all of Substack, because the yearly is only $49 US money, which equates to $4.08 monthly. The only thing missing is the gun, the ski mask, and the getaway car. I mean, it is a highway robbery deal for that type of content.
Well, given that you're putting out something every single day, you're talking
multiple segments
60 cents, less than the cost of a newspaper in 1985. How about that for a video presentation of the news?
And so no ads, nothing's interfering with anything. It's pure content. There's nothing that interrupts or an ad that plays, or we're not selling, whatever pills for enhancements of this and that. None of that. It's just pure content. Yeah,
well said. Well, Josh, look, it's been an incredible year, regardless, 2025 for the adventure. I came into 25 doing something different than I was doing in 24, and we'll go into 26 and there'll be something else different again for people. Myself just trying to rejuvenate and work out where it is that we can start to make a real difference and penetrate the mainstream. For mine, it's always been about that. It's not been just trying to muster up the troops in the alternative media and turn that into something. I just don't think that's the way it's going to work, and we've been at it for a decade now, and that's not quite the way. So look, different arguments. One thing I'll just mention right now, and it'll be interesting to see people who have got this far in, I'm going to reach out to Barclay McGain, who is a young Aussie who's not in the Liberal Party but has been talking about the alternative politics here in Australia, about whether you join the mainstream or whether you join the third parties. And I think Barclay's one of those very good young sharp thinkers, and he's actually a mate of mine. So I'm going to maybe look at doing that in early January as a bit of a discussion point to see where people align politically. Look out on that one. I don't normally announce things in advance, but I know Barclay will be up for it because that's one of his specialties. But those are the types of things I've got to do. Obviously, stuff that's more interesting to the Australian audience, but at the same time, it's America where it sort of lies, and that's why I've always been focused on that. Always just doing something a little bit different than everyone else is doing. But Josh, thanks again for a terrific year.
You're welcome. Anytime, any topic, and I look forward to the next one. Actually, the next one would be Wednesday, our Christmas Eve, your Christmas. So I would assume that we'll probably have to skip that week.
Yeah, that might be the week that we have off. Because it will be actually Christmas Day. All right. Well, thanks everyone. We'll see you in a couple of weeks from this perspective, and have a wonderful Christmas, etc., and even a New Year if we don't see you before then. Thank you.